Hello, BookTube. You may have seen a little mini fad going around our little corner of BookTube where that started off with people talking about their top 5 English novels and has fractured ever since then into one smaller fraction after another. Top favorite this, top 5 favorite that. I love it. I think it flushes a whole bunch of books out into the spotlight, which is great in a way that perhaps top 5 English novels doesn't, really structurally can't. I mean, how many spaces are open in those top 5 even now in the in the year of our Lord 2022? How many spots of those will really be up for grabs? Whereas these fractal top fives, they're anybody's game. So I did one yesterday, and I got a request for one today. And I am always happy to do requests. This one was for my top 5 books by guys named Irving. And I am happy to oblige. We'll start off with a name that none of you will know, unfortunately. Irving Malin was a literary critic, I believe from New York, he was one of those literary critics that I have a whole bookcase of them in the other room. One of those literary critics that did a fantastic job writing about authors I don't like, which you would think maybe me being a set in my ways, sexy 28-year-old influencer might be antithetical, but no. If you're going to be have really brilliant insights into some literary trend or literary figure or literary period, I almost want it to be one that I don't like, so that I stand the greatest chance of learning something and maybe changing my mind, maybe getting in on a good thing that I've been missing. And Irving Malin he wrote a book about Faulkner that I thought was bearable. It didn't change my mind about Faulkner, but at least it was really interesting to read. And he wrote a great book called Saul Bellow and His Critics. I'm pretty sure that these things came to me in just the course of my bookish world, but I'm pretty sure they're not widely available. I'd be willing to bet a Boston cream pie that Irving Malin is out of print, unfortunately, because at least I mean his book on Faulkner got into the weeds a bit. He was a big Faulkner fan, but Saul Bellow and His Critics is a valuable book. It would work now, and it would work no matter who that name in the title is. It doesn't have to be Saul Bellow. I liked it a lot. I liked that book a lot. I wish I had a copy of it. Then the next Irving that we will deal with is Irving Johnson, who, under a variety of names and a variety of pen names, but often his own, wrote a whole bunch of great sailing literature. So, again, a little bit on the specific side. You probably won't read my first choice if you're not into reading books about books, and if you're not into reading essentially literary criticism, literary reaction, that sort of thing. And if you're not interested in reading nautical stuff, nautical nonfiction, nautical memoirs, then Irving Johnson probably won't do it for you any more than, for instance, the great writing of his father. His father was also a great writer. The only reason he's not on the list is because he's not named Irving. But his father wrote a great bunch of. He wrote a lot. His father was far more prolific than he was as a writer. But he wrote a great series of books on country New England, on the back roads and the ways and the Y4s of a world of backcountry New England that is, of course, completely gone now. Vestiges of it remain. But it's hard to bring the whole thing back when you're not, for instance, growing and cultivating and also feeding and killing your own food. It's impossible to capture it completely when we live in the age of the internet. But his books are wonderful. Again, I'm sure that Irving Johnson's father's books are entirely out of print. Irving Johnson's books, for all I know, are probably out of print. I jotted down some titles: Yankee Sails Across Europe, Yankee Sails the Nile, and a great book called Round the Horn in a Square Rigger, that, if I remember correctly, Johnson did not write under his own name. It still counts. He was still Irving, but I think he wrote it under a pen name. I don't know that any of these things are in print. If any of them should be, Round the Horn in a Square Rigger should be in print. It's a classic of nautical writing. But those two are the least known of the 5 top Irvings that I want to bring to your attention. The next one, number 3, was once upon a time a whole lot more known than he is now. Once upon a time, he was a best-selling author in America, and that's Irving Wallace, who wrote all kinds of books, fiction, but all kinds of fictions, short, plot-based, much longer, far more ruminative, almost Mishner-esque. He wrote a book called The Man, that really ought to be in print today. I was amazed that unless I missed it, I was assuming, given its subject matter, that whoever owns the rights to it would have brought it back into print when Barack Obama was elected president. But I don't think that happened. He also wrote a book called The Word about Christianity, among other things, about what would constitute a bombshell textual revelation if it came to light, what would happen if a bombshell textual revelation came to light in Christianity. He did this long before Dan Brown. Those two books of his are seriously good. They are seriously good novels. They don't deserve to be out of print. But I myself am a fan of almost everything that he wrote. I like a lot of it. A lot of it is really good. Very meaty, very self-assured, very historical. Even when he's not writing about history, it has that kind of a feel to it of an author going into their study and just doing their best work. So I'm a little bit sorry that Irving Wallace is out of print. And then the next guy named Irving on our list here, I probably should have ranked him lower than Irving Wallace in terms of knowability. Because you can find Irving Wallace in used bookstores, and readers of a certain age will remember him. Whereas my next choice is Irving Howe, who wrote a ton of stuff. He never stopped writing. But he's also a critic, and also a political critic, and those are, he's not a feel-good critic. He never intended to be, so those don't anthologize as well. They don't live as long. I jotted down, he also wrote a book called Faulkner. I swear, my critical brethren, they keep returning like dogs to their own vomit. But he also wrote something called Celebrations and Attacks, which is a collection of some of the many, many, many book reviews that he wrote in the course of his career that are just tangled, deeply intelligent stuff. Just an amazing critic, someone worth the time to find. A library, a university library maybe, might still have some Irving Howe. He also wrote a book called A Margin of Hope, kind of an eggheady memoir that's really, really good. It's really involving. You won't stop reading. And in addition to a critical appraisal of Faulkner, he wrote a critical appraisal of Thomas Hardy that's also really good. So Irving Howe should probably have been up at the top of this list if we're going in ascending order of knowability. And when we are ascending the ladder to the well-known Irvings, I'm going to finish this list with the best-known Irving of them all, which is Washington Irving. The first great American writer, a first in so many ways, a fascinating figure. But the most important thing about him when we're talking about books is that his books are all still readable. I mean, you'll know him for the sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon. You'll know him for Rumpelstiltskin and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. He's known for those two things. But he wrote a lot of other stuff. Those two things have not aged a day. They are still wonderful to read. And so is everything around them in that collection. But I've shown on this channel a few times his wonderful book on the Alhambra. He wrote Bracebridge Hall and also, well, I'm hesitating here because it'll never come back into print. It's shameful. It should. But he wrote a multi-volume biography of George Washington, for whom he was named. And it's really, really good. We have a lamentable tendency in the 21st century, the 20th century, ever since the Germans established the idea of legitimate critical history a couple of centuries ago. Ever since then, we've had this idea that history, that the writing of history is like, I don't even know, fashion in hats, that it can date. All because the Germans, quite rightly, emphasized the idea of a judicious, objective handling of sources. And once you elevate that to the prime mover in the writing of history, then the sources become more important than the job you do with them. And if you have newer sources, then it's just assumed that your history of X, Y, or Z supersedes the history of X, Y, or Z that didn't have those newer sources. I don't understand that. Like I've said on this channel many times, when a new novel about a foundling in London comes to print in the UK, no one says that it supersedes Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. No one does that. I don't know why we do that with history. There's a lot more that comes to bear in the writing of a work of history or biography than simply assessing the sources. That is too German a view, even for the Germans. So I don't know why our academics embrace that. Are there newer histories of George Washington, newer biographies of George Washington and Washington Irvings? Yes, of course, there are. But nevertheless, it's terrific. It's as readable as anything else that the guy wrote. Now, I'm not meaning my send-off with 5 guys named Irving to be a call for you to go and somehow find the unabridged Washington Irving biography of George Washington. I would, the most I would do is say, go and find some Washington Irving. If you only know him through Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and you only know Legend of Sleepy Hollow through the great old cartoon, or the Johnny Depp movie, or later movies, anything like that, do yourself a favor and go and find the sketchbook and read everything in it. You'll be happy that you did. Bracebridge Hall as well. Go and find these things. They're wonderful stuff, and they captivated an audience on both sides of the Atlantic when no other American had yet done that. So, but anyway, no writings from America had yet done that. So, though that is my top 5 books by guys named Irving. And I am definitely going to continue with these weird top 5s. They're too much fun not to do. So who knows what I'll do next time. But I'll wrap this one up for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.